Welcome to the Cut Block Podcast, where we cut through the noise and keep it real. Just because a cut block is legal doesn't make it right. Kind of like Cory Hogue's takes. Now, here's your host, Cory Hogue.
Thank you, Jesse, and welcome to the Cut Block Podcast. This week, we're cutting through the noise. We're going to get real about college football polls. I'm joined by the head coach of the 2-0 UT Permian Basin Falcons, Kris McCullough. He's going to discuss his team, the Lone Star Conference, Super Region 4, and more. And, of course, we close things out with the weekend warm-up. It's my personal viewing schedule for the weekend. My name is Cory Hogue, proprietor of CoryHogueSports.substack.com. Find me on social media, anywhere, search at Cory Hogue Sports. It's all one word, CoryHogue Sports. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review this podcast wherever you listen. And you can find every episode on our homepage at thecutblock.podbean.com. Thank you all for your support. It's time to dig in the trenches. And this week, it's all about early season college football polls. You know, every year when the college football season kicks off, there's one thing we can always count on showing up right alongside the first step. It's polls, preseason rankings. They get us excited. Weekly ballots, all the predictions. And on the surface, the polls are supposed to give us some context. They're supposed to tell us who's rising, who's struggling, and which programs deserve to be in the national conversation. But here's the truth. At the non-FBS levels, FCS, Division II, Division III, NAIA, and JUCO, those polls are not reflecting reality. They're reflecting a reputation. Think about it. We've already seen it this year, multiple times. UIW sitting ahead of Nichols in the FCS polls, despite a convincing win by the Colonels in the opening week, in week 0. UTPB fighting uphill against Central Oklahoma in the Division II coaches poll after defeating them in the first week. Then you got Lamar. They're ranked 12 spots behind a South Dakota team they just defeated, and it wasn't a fluke. Those rankings don't make sense if you've actually watched the games, but they make perfect sense if you understand how most of these votes get cast. Too often it's just slot voting. Voters pull out last week's poll, shuffle a few teams up or down, and submit. Or in some cases, a head coach hands the ballot to a young grad assistant who's already got 100 things on his plate. He doesn't have time to study scores and film across the country, so he fills in the usual suspects, the brand names, the teams that were good last year. That's the problem with preseason polls and early season rankings. They're almost entirely based on last season's results. It's how I do my predictions for the preseason, for the magazine. It's based on what you've done. Rosters change so much right now with the transfer portal and everything. You truly don't know what a team has until you're a few weeks into the season. But if you had success last year, you get penciled back into your familiar spot. If you're a brand name, you get the benefit of the doubt. And if you're a program trying to climb like a UTPB or a Lamar, you start from the bottom. And you've got to do twice as much to even get noticed. Look, and once perception sets in early, it's incredibly hard to shake. Because media coverage, recruiting attention, even playoff discussions, they're all influenced by who's ranked and who's not. Whether the committees want to admit it or not, that's what happens. And that's why this matters. Polls just don't spark the conversation. They shape it. So what's the solution? It's simple. Stop putting out polls until October. Give teams 4 or 5 weeks to prove themselves on the field. Let the games speak before the voters do. Because right now, these polls aren't providing context. They're distorting it. If we wait until October, programs like the UTPB, Lamar, and so many others across the country would finally get a fair shake. The rankings would start to reflect the season we're actually watching, not the one voters imagined back in August. So yeah, keep the conversation going. Keep debating. It's part of the fun. But let's build those conversations on reality, not a reputation. If polls are going to matter, they've got to reflect what's happening between the white lines. not what happened last year. Let the FBS do their own thing. The rest of us down here, we should do better. Cut Block Podcast is a listener-supported podcast, and if you have the means, I'd be honored to have you as a paying subscriber over at CoryHogueSports.substack.com, CoryHogue sports.substack.com. Paid subscribers get every story delivered right to their inbox. Annual subscribers get 6 months free, and founding members, I call them all-stars, they receive early access to posts, plus my undying love and gratitude. It's time to head into the Gridiron briefing room, and my guest this week is the head coach of the 2-0 UT Permian Basin Falcons, Kris McCullough. Coach, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, Cory. Thanks for having me, and appreciate all the coverage over the years for non-FBS football, man. It means a lot.
Well, thank you. It means a lot to me. Everyone has been so great, and I am greatly appreciative. I want to ask you, you were talking about the road trip. You just went to Adams. You won pretty handily. You got a nice win over Central Oklahoma that looks even better now. But you said that was such a brutal trip. I don't understand what it is. Give me kind of a rough outlined weekend schedule of what it was like for the Falcons.
Yeah, so you leave at 7:30 in the morning on Friday, and you don't get to your hotel until about 6. Eat dinner quickly, have a little game night, and just spend some time with the family, as in our coaching staff and our players. And then you wake up in the morning, you got all day to sit around and just think about the game, right? Because we don't play till 6 o'clock their time, 7 o'clock Central time. And then, you're at elevation, so that's a task in itself. And then, Levi Gallus and the job he's done there, the old West Texas A&M defensive coordinator, he's got those guys playing really hard. So, we didn't score till 3 minutes to go in the first quarter. We struggled a little bit starting out. And thankfully, Coach Shaw's defense and what those guys have done in the first 2 games is unbelievable. But, they stuck around and kept it a shutout, and we were able to get on the board. And then once that halftime came around, it was not the best halftime ever because we weren't playing good. But after halftime, we kind of rolled, and proud of the way we fought on offense, defense, special teams. We gave up the shutout, but those guys played really hard, and we were able to play over 70 guys in that football game, which was awesome. But then you don't get back to Odessa till about 10 a.m. on Sunday. So I spent the next 6 hours sleeping after that. So Sunday was a waste, but we were able to get back to work this morning and get ready for Kingsville.
Is there anything that could be done work-wise on the bus?
If you got Wi-Fi, there is. I bring a hotspot. I don't sleep on the bus at all.
Okay.
But most of our players and coaches do. So I watched a little bit of Kingsville's game against Lincoln, and just self-scouted us for the first 2 games and see what we can do better as a team.
Well, and you're heading into your bye week. So after 2 games, this seems like I know coaches always say we improve the most from week 1 to week 2. But now you've got 2 weeks under your belt. Do you feel that this might be right around the sweet spot for getting a bye week early in the season?
Yeah, ideally I would love week 5 or week 6, halfway through the season. But for us and our football team, we have a lot of guys coming back from injury, and this bye week helps us tremendously get back healthy. This will be the first game, knock on wood, barring any craziness in practice. This will be the first time in my 3 years here that we've been fully healthy as a team and have all of our travel squad going into a game. So this will be huge for us to have that and to have this bye week to work on Kingsville, because they're a very good football team, and it's going to take us a lot of time to prepare for them. So being healthy is everything to us, and having this bye to refocus on conference play. 2-0 and non-con is great, but it's a whole new season now. We're 0-0, and every week is essentially a playoff game. If we want to win a conference title and want to make the playoffs, every week is crucial.
That is a tough trip also to Kingsville. And so having one to Adams out of the way probably helps as well. But I know, listen, from my point of view, I'm not a coach. I don't see the game the same way you guys do. But I as a rider, get nothing out of like Kingsville Lincoln. I know coaches get some things. But as a writer, I'm looking forward to this week's game when they play Northwest Missouri State. That's the one I've got on my watch list this week.
Absolutely. Lincoln, obviously, it's not as it doesn't tell you as much as this week will, like you said, but you can get the basics of what Coach Parr and that staff want to do. Coach Bish does an unbelievable job with the defense and has for years. This will be my, fourth time facing Coach Bish. So we know what to expect, but, they throw wrinkles in there. Just like Coach Parr's new offense, you're going to have to defend a pass about 65% of the time, and he does a good job. So just seeing what their basics are. But this week you can focus half on Kingsville and half on ourselves of just developing that second-tier guys to try to get to the top tier. We went through today and saw how many reps we took. Of the 70 guys, like Tristan Exline only had 38 reps this last game.
Wow.
So getting some of those 2s and 3s into the game, having over 20 snaps is crucial for down the road in this Lone Star Conference play. I think the Lone Star Conference this year is probably the best it's been since Tarleton was in the conference. So week in and week out, we got to come ready to play, but we're going to have to lean on some of those 2s and 3s as the season drags on because it's not going to be easy, and you got to deal with injuries, and you never know what's going to happen. So we got the opportunity the last 2 weeks to play a lot of guys, and that is huge because UCO was obviously a huge task for us, but in that fourth quarter, we had everybody playing because we were up by 20. So that was huge for us to have that ability to do so.
Yeah, you're only as good as your weakest link. And so you got to keep building everyone. It's interesting you say that about the Lone Star Conference because somebody a couple weeks ago was poo-pooing the conference on some Substack somewhere. But it really, it was, for me, it was a prove-it time for the Lone Star Conference. I feel like that's happened now. WT, they're better. Right? Midwestern State, I thought how they played outside of some special teams issues was pretty good against Western Colorado. The RMAC, the GAC, the MIAA, they get talked about a lot. The Lone Star has more than held their own so far.
Absolutely. The week one, Angelo beating Fort Hays the way they did, and then Fort Hays going to Pueblo and beating Pueblo was huge. Us, same thing, UCO, right? We beat them by 20, and then they go knock off the powerhouse Pitt State, who everybody had in the top 5 to begin the year. But then Angelo does it again this week with Emporia State in the MIAA. Angelo lost their quarterback in the first drive, and it didn't matter. They kept rolling and kept playing to the Angelo standard. So Coach Gersh does a phenomenal job over there. Nobody's talking about WT like they should be. They took Western Colorado to the fourth quarter, and it was a ball game. They took School of Mines to the last minute of the fourth quarter until a safety happened. WT's a really good football team, and Josh Lynn has those guys rolling. I know they're 0-2, but they played 2 perennial powerhouses and held their own against them. They're going to be a tough out. And so is, like you said, Midwestern. Coach Renner does a great job over there. Central Washington almost had the lead in the third quarter against a top 25 FCS team. Western Oregon, the coach has been there for over 20 years and beat us last year. And until quarterback injury happened, they were rolling. They were undefeated. So the coaches in this conference, the programs in this conference have really started taking steps to show that the Lone Star is not to be messed with. I think it is a really good conference this year, and I'm excited to see how this season winds up because every single week is a battle, and every single week you can get beat. I mean, Western New Mexico had 700 yards of offense the other night.
Yes.
In a 60 to 50 game. I know they didn't come out on top, but they had a good showing against Adams State, who gave us some fits during that first half. So I think this whole conference, top to bottom, there's some good football teams in it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And across the region, it's a tough region. We know that. You've got to have a tough conference because when you get to the playoffs in Super Region 4 now, you're going to be facing heavyweights every single week. And honestly, I'd like your opinion on this because from my point of view, it's almost like every week you're playing a team that would have the capability of winning a national championship.
Absolutely. I mean, you just think about it, just brainstorming real quick. You got Harding University, who won a national championship a few years ago. You got School of Mines, who went to the national championship a few years ago, right? You got Western Colorado, who's a perennial quarterfinal type of team. You got obviously Angelo, who the last 5 years has been in the playoffs. Central Washington, the same thing. And then you look at the MIAA and, recent history, they haven't made it to the semifinals. But the history of the MIAA, they're usually going to be in the semifinals. So you got obviously Pitt State, who's 0-2, but have the toughest schedule in the country. They play Grand Valley State, I believe, this week, and that's a huge game. You got Central Oklahoma, who's kind of the new kids on the block that, we beat them, but it's tough to beat a team twice. So if we play them again, it's not going to be easy, right?
Yeah.
Fort Hays State is a really good football team. I know Angelo beat them. But they're really good. So every week you could see a perennial powerhouse that you have to meet in the playoffs. Every single week you could see a Harding round 1, School of Mines round 2, Pitt State or UCO round 3, like in any kind of order that is. With obviously a CSU Pueblo, who I still think is a very good top 15 team.
Yeah, it's crazy how strong the region is, and only 8 teams get in this year. There's years I could easily fill 8, not this year. It is crazy. I got a piece that we're recording this on a Monday. I got a piece coming out on Tuesday where I talk about polls and the slot voting and preseason polls and this and that. I'm curious your thought on this. My idea is that preseason polls are fine. They get us excited about football. There shouldn't be another poll until October. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think probably week 4 is when you can really start determining, okay, this team is a top 25 team. There's upsets that happen a lot week 0. We obviously we're part of one of those, right? And nobody expected us to be top 25, and then we jump into it, right? And we beat Adams State, and we're going into a bye, but can you really tell how good we are until we have 3 or 4 games under our belt? I don't know. It's funny to me, we beat UCO, and then they're still 2 spots ahead of us last week when that second poll came out. It's just, you never know. And then obviously UCO beats Pitt State, and we jump UCO because they beat Pitt State. And people realize, okay, that win was actually pretty good. So it's interesting to see how the pollsters vote and how things come out. But do you really know until week 4 or 5 what those teams are? I think it'd be cool to go back in recent history and look at, all right, what was the week 2 poll? What did it say? And then compare that to the end of the season and see how far off it is. Usually those top 4 or 5 teams are probably going to be towards the top 10 at the end of the season. But outside of that, man, it's going to be a constant juggling act of teams here, teams there. You really don't know until you get halfway through the season what you got. And then injuries happen, right? I think we've seen it before here. We lost our starting quarterback last year and against Angelo State in that second drive, and it changed our season. Now, Isaac Morin did a great job coming in, but it definitely the one injury can affect your entire team really fast.
Yeah, and boy, you have got – I want to finish up here really praising some of the Falcons players that you have, because you have a tremendous group of talented guys. You mentioned Tristan Exline earlier. He is an All-American. Cannon Gibson, he is playing tremendous at quarterback. Cory Harris at tailback. You've got guys all over the place. Another thing that I'd like for you to talk about is that when you say family, it's not just something you say. I don't know of another coach who has had as many players stick around and coach for them as you have in the last few years.
Yeah, it's our culture is why we have the success we have. These guys buy into each other in the locker room we have right now and the leadership in that locker room, because we are a player-led team. It's the best I've had, including 2023. It's pretty special what goes on in that locker room and the decisions they make without me having to do much. Even today, I had the leadership council make a decision that every head coach usually makes, but I want to see what they do and let them be the grown men in the situation and learn from it. But, it's fun to have those guys come and be coaches for you. We've had Matt Zubiotti and Hayden Kelly and Gunnar Apsek and obviously Kenny Hertz, our offensive coordinator, along with others that they get done playing and they want to coach. River Rodriguez is our running back coach, and he played the first spring I was here and decided he wanted to coach. And he's one of the best coaches I've been around, and he's a young kid who's got a bright future. But having guys like that, they know the culture, they know what it takes, they know what we're trying to accomplish in that locker room, and they're getting it done in their position rooms the exact same. So the buy-in just builds up really, really good for your culture and what you're preaching every day when you hire guys like that. When you hire outsiders, it takes a while for them to buy into what you're trying to do. It's real easy plug and play when those guys have already been in that culture. So I love the staff, and most of these guys have been with me for 4 or 5 years. So that helps tremendously of having guys that know what I'm talking about, know what we're about in the good, bad, and all the adversity we face. It's really easy when those moments happen and the guys know what to preach and what to do.
You are a man far wiser than your age, sir. You really are. And one thing I did mention a couple weeks ago, so I'd be curious to get your view on this. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a chance to answer here. I mentioned something about how a couple weeks ago, UCO, 4th down, it was in their territory, about 28-yard line. You chose to punt the ball. A couple years ago, maybe even last year, I said that's something you would go for all the time. That maybe, as you've aged as a head coach already, and good Lord, you're in your 4th year, 5th year of head coach. It's crazy how fast this time goes. What have you learned, and how much have you kind of seen yourself kind of mature through that process?
I think I was being soft, Cory, to be honest with you. No, usually I would have gone for that 4th and 2, and I think we're at 31 or something like that. Usually I would go for that every time, every year I've been a head coach. But in that game and in that moment, feeling how our defense was playing and how good our punter really is to be able to pin them inside the 10, I had all the faith that he would do that. And I had all the faith that we'd be able to get a 3 and out and get the ball right back. Our kicker won special teams player of the week that week, but I didn't feel like he was comfortable from that spot in that situation right there. So just trusting our defense and this team and our championship run that we want to make, I'm going to put on the back of our defense. I trust them full-heartedly, and that decision worked out. I think we could have easily got the 4th and 2 with the offensive line and the quarterback play that we've had. But I just was a little bit more conservative than I normally am. And then later in the game, I go for it on 4th and 1 from our 50, right? So
yeah,
it's just filling out the game and filling out what this team feels in that moment. I just felt more comfortable putting the defense. Just like 8 minutes later, I felt more comfortable just going for it, putting the ball in the hands of Cannon Gibson, which he got the first down. But I've done a better job of not just, all right, I'm going to go for it no matter what, because that's my philosophy. I've been more, okay, let's fill this game out and fill this team out and figure out exactly where we are right now in this moment in time, where I haven't done that in the past, and it may have hurt me here or there. I think we've been 85 or 90% on 4th down since I've been the head coach here. So we've had success doing it, but I've gotten smarter. I'm still 29, but luckily I hired an old head is what I say. We call him our grandpa, Mike Babcock, to be on staff. So he's helped me with some of those situations too. I've obviously told him no a few times. I'm going for it, but for the most part, we talk about those situations, and having another head coach on staff definitely helps.
Yeah, listen, man. What the proof is in the pudding, right? The Falcons win. That's all you guys have done since you took over. Thank you so much, Kris, for joining me today. I really appreciate it, man. And I know that trip was long. Get you some rest.
Appreciate you, Cory. Falcons up.
Stay connected with me on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and more. Just search at Cory Hogue Sports, CoryHogue Sports. You can also reach me directly by email. This is going to surprise you. CoryHogueSports@gmail.com. And now, it is time for your weekend war map. The war map is your guide to the games that I'm watching, designed to make sure you don't miss the best action in non-FBS football across Texas and beyond. And we're starting at 1100 hours with Houston Christian stepping into enemy territory against Nebraska on FS1. HCU is better than expected out of the gate a little this year. They held their own against a solid Eastern Kentucky team last week. But this is Nebraska. The Cornhuskers are massive up front. HCU will find out quickly how far they've come. It's less about winning this game for the Huskies. It's more about surviving, getting out injury-free, landing some shots if you can, and hopefully be within striking distance at halftime. At that same hour, 1100, Ottawa, Arizona travels to Nelson. It's streaming on the Nelson Sports Network on YouTube. Ottawa's rolled past Wayland Baptist, 49-7 last week. They've got the kind of speed and offensive balance that causes problems for most opponents. Even with a head coaching change, nothing has changed for the Spirit. Nelson's a bit of an unknown here. They had a rough game against a solid Mid-American Nazarene squad 2 weeks ago. But they could give the Spirit a run this week with some corrections. They had a bye week to fix things. And don't overlook that 11 a.m. start time. That's 9 a.m. in Arizona. That means these players are going to be getting up for what their body's used to. It's going to be real early in the morning. And that can make a difference in your focus. At 1,330 hours, that's 1:30 for you normal people, Texas A&M Kingsville marches into one of Division II's most hostile fortresses, Northwest Missouri State, on the MIAA network. The Javelinas opened their season last week with a dominating win over an overmatched foe. But playing the Bearcats in Maryville is a different proposition. You don't just need talent. You need discipline. Because Northwest, they live off your mistakes. If Kingsville keeps their composure, this could be a statement game. We will know more about Scott Parr, the Javelinas, and that offense after they visit Northwest Missouri State in Maryville this week. 1,500 hours, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Navarro travels north to face Northeastern Oklahoma A&M on the Golden Norse pay-per-view stream. Navarro opened its season last week with a 42-27 loss at home to Garden City. The reigning Southwest Junior College Football Conference champs need to bounce back quickly against an NEO squad that has scored 31 points combined while allowing 48 points in losses to Butler and Independence. The Bulldogs are favored, but Miami, Oklahoma, however they pronounce it, can be a difficult place for the opposition. Then we move into the nighttime slate of games, all these games again Saturday. In fact, every game in non-FBS this week across Texas is on Saturdays, no Thursday games. But boy, does it get busy at 1,800 hours. Tarleton heads to Conway to take on Central Arkansas on ESPN+. The Texans have been a model of consistency this season. They have been efficient on offense, sound on defense, no self-inflicted wounds. Third-year starting quarterback Victor Gabales has 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, 599 yards passing with 61% completion percentage in 3 games, and that includes a game against Army. Listen, last week was impressive. The way they kept their focus after that win over Army and came out and thoroughly handled business from the start against Mississippi Valley State shows that this Todd Whitten squad, they're ready to compete nationally. But UCA is dangerous at home. It's kind of test the team's ready to fight for postseason respect, come away victorious. The Texans will be favored. The Texans are going to be the team that everyone expects to win. If they maintain that focus that they've shown the first 3 games of this season, they're going to be ready to go and give UCA fits on the road. Also, 1,800 hours, McMurray heads across town to Hardin-Simmons, and that game's on hsuathletics.com, where they're going to battle for the Wilford Moore Trophy. Cowboys have dominated this rivalry, winning 14 of 15 games and 10 in a row. 3 of the last 4 meetings have been decided by 5 points or less. The Warhawks are closing ground on the Cowboys. They suffered a loss to an improving Southwestern squad last week. They're going to want to be bouncing back. While HSU, they returned from a trip to California with a solid win over Chapman. But I imagine that watching that game, they've also got some adjustments and things they'd like to change after their first game of the season. Look, rivalry games don't care about the rankings. If you don't execute, you get ambushed. And the Cowboys have been primed for ambushing from McMurray recently. Will they handle their business this week? Or does Jordan Hill come away with one of those big-time victories for the McMurray program? And finally, at 1900 hours, Tyler Apaches rolls into Trinity Valley, streaming on Trinity Valley's YouTube page, TVCC's YouTube channel. It's one of those NJCAA matchups that can define a season. Tyler's been leaning on its defense to win games this year. It has been impressive against a couple of decent foes, Dodge City and Snow College. Trinity Valley has shown some explosiveness on offense, but they haven't always protected the ball so far. They do have a quarterback, the ASC Offensive Player of the Year last year, Caden Brown. He's a difference maker as well. But this game comes down to the line of scrimmage. Whoever controls it here is going to come out with the win. And not only with a win, they leave with momentum that can carry through conference play in a brutal Southwestern Junior College Football Conference. This game here will go a long way to determine the regular season champion, playoff seeding. There's a lot on the line at that game, 1900 hours at Trinity Valley. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of the Cut Block Podcast, and want to say a big thank you to Kris McCullough for joining as well. I'll be back with another episode soon, bringing you more unfiltered truth and fearless football talk. Until then, stay safe. And remember, just because it's legal doesn't make it right. Just like my takes.
Thank you for listening to the Cut Block Podcast with Cory Hogue. Remember, the cut block might be legal, but that doesn't make it right. Just like Cory Hogue's takes.